Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Stories That Teach. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're unraveling a mischievous tale from Chile, South America. It's called Pedro and the Farmer's Daughters. With me is language expert Jamie. Jamie, what can listeners expect from today's episode?
Thanks, Alex. Today, we'll walk through Pedro's antics, discuss key vocabulary, and extract practical lessons from his story. It's more than just entertainment. It's a chance to improve your English and critical thinking skills. Ready to dive in?
Let's start at the beginning. Pedro is known for avoiding hard work and prefers tricking people to get money. Why do you think stories like this are common in folk tales, Jamie?
Great question, Alex. Folk tales often use characters like Pedro to serve as warnings. By highlighting someone who cheats instead of working, they teach communities to value honesty and diligence. It's a bit like Aesop's fables, but with a Chilean twist.
So, Pedro represents the kind of person people should be cautious of. He's charming but unreliable. That's a universal lesson, isn't it?
Absolutely. Across cultures, we see similar figures, like the trickster in African or Native American tales. They entertain us, but also remind us to be careful about whom we trust.
Pedro finally gets a job with a farmer who has a pretty wife and 3 daughters. But instead of focusing on work, Pedro is distracted. Can you break down his motivation here, Jamie?
Pedro's main goal isn't to work hard. It's to spend time with the farmer's daughters. His behavior is a classic example of misplaced priorities. He's not thinking of the job's responsibilities, but rather his own interests.
It's interesting how personal desires can overshadow professional duties. Do you see parallels in real life?
Definitely. In any job, if someone's distracted by ulterior motives, their performance suffers. This story exaggerates it for humor, but it's a real workplace issue.
Pedro teams up with another worker to wash the barn, but they take turns sleeping instead. What does this reveal about their approach to teamwork?
Instead of collaborating honestly, they collude to avoid work. It's a misuse of teamwork working together to cheat, not to achieve a goal. It's an example of negative peer influence.
So, rather than increasing productivity, their scheme just delays the job. What lesson can listeners draw from this?
If you cut corners with others, you might escape notice temporarily, but the work and consequences pile up. True teamwork requires shared responsibility, not shared shortcuts.
When the farmer asks Pedro to sell pigs in town, Pedro plots another trick. He hides the pigs in a swamp and sells them elsewhere, using just the pigtails as evidence. How does this escalate Pedro's pattern of deceit?
Pedro's trick grows more elaborate. By hiding the pigs and showing only their tails sticking out of the mud, he constructs a believable lie. It's like a magician's illusion, distracts the farmer with a fake problem while profiting behind the scenes.
It's both creative and unethical. What might motivate someone to go to such lengths?
Necessity, greed, or simply the thrill of outsmarting others. But as the story hints, these tricks rarely end well in the long run.
After selling the pigs, Pedro tries on new shoes in town, but leaves without paying, promising to write back. What does this reveal about Pedro's character, Jamie?
Pedro's clever, but unreliable. He uses charm and quick thinking to get what he wants without commitment. In modern terms, he's like someone who borrows and never returns, a pattern of avoidance and empty promises.
And yet, he keeps escaping consequences. Is this sustainable?
Not really. While he gets away with it in the story, eventually, reputation catches up. In life, trust is hard to rebuild once lost.
The climax comes when Pedro tricks the farmer into letting him kiss all 3 daughters. How does this moment bring the story full circle?
It's the culmination of Pedro's manipulation. He seizes the perfect moment, leveraging confusion and his quick wit. This scene encapsulates both the humor and the lesson sometimes. Being clever gets you what you want temporarily, but not without risks.
So, the story ends with Pedro fleeing. Is this a satisfying conclusion?
It's fitting for a folk tale. The trickster escapes, but listeners are left questioning whether such behavior truly pays off in the end.
Let's shift gears and unpack some vocabulary. Jamie, what does worthwhile mean, and how might I use it in daily conversation?
Worthwhile describes something deserving of your time or effort. For example, is it worthwhile to study every day? It means, is it valuable or beneficial?
In trick?
Trick can be a clever act meant to deceive. For instance, he played a trick on his friend. It often has a negative or playful meaning, depending on context.
How about take a shortcut?
To take a shortcut means to choose a quicker, often easier path, sometimes unwise, as with Pedro. Example, I took a shortcut through the park to get home.
What does collude mean, as you mentioned earlier?
Collude is to secretly cooperate for a dishonest purpose, like Pedro and his coworker sleeping instead of working. Example, the two companies colluded to fix prices.
Explain ulterior motive.
An ulterior motive is a hidden reason for doing something. For example, she offered help, but I suspect an ulterior motive.
Let's try cut corners.
To cut corners means to do something poorly or incompletely to save time or money. Example, if you cut corners, you might miss important details.
How about pile up, as you mentioned earlier?
Pile up means to accumulate or increase over time. For example, if you ignore your homework, it will pile up.
Consequences is another useful word.
Consequences are the results or effects of actions. For example, cheating has serious consequences.
What does take turns mean?
To take turns means each person does something one after the other, like Pedro and his coworker sleeping while washing the barn.
Explain misplaced priorities.
Misplaced priorities means focusing on less important things over what truly matters. Example, Pedro's misplaced priorities led him to chase the daughters instead of working.
What about scheme in this context?
A scheme is a secret or dishonest plan. For example, Pedro's scheme was to fool the farmer and sell the pigs.
Leverage is a powerful word. How is it used here?
Leverage means to use something to maximum advantage. Pedro leveraged the situation to get what he wanted.
And finally, what does get away with mean?
Get away with means to do something wrong without being punished. Example, he got away with lying because no one found out.
Now, let's make a practical connection. Jamie, how can we relate Pedro's story to challenges in our own lives?
Pedro's shortcuts and deceptions remind us that quick fixes rarely lead to lasting success. In our lives, whether at work or school, honesty and perseverance pay off more than tricks. For example, doing your own homework builds real skill, unlike copying.
That's true. Sometimes, the temptation to cut corners is strong, especially when results feel slow. But the story warns us about the long-term effects, right?
Exactly. While Pedro escapes for now, his reputation suffers. In real life, trust opens doors while dishonesty closes them. It's a lesson about the value of integrity.
Let's invite our listeners to reflect. If you were in Pedro's shoes, facing the same temptations, what choices would you make? Would you follow the rules or risk shortcuts like Pedro?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Which part of the story surprised you most? And how would you handle it differently? Share your answers with us on our social media or language forum. Your perspective helps everyone learn.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. Jamie, any final advice for our English learners?
Absolutely. Keep exploring stories in English. They're a fun way to remember new words and ideas. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just like Pedro wasn't afraid to try new things, just choose honesty over shortcuts.
Thanks, Jamie, and thank you, listeners. Stay curious, keep practicing, and remember, every story is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep learning and have fun with English.
Goodbye, everyone. We can't wait to hear your thoughts and help you on your language journey. Stay motivated and see you in the next episode.